Good morning, start your day informed and ahead. Today is Monday, the 10th of August. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
And I'm Cheska Litancala. We are bringing you the perfect mix of the headlines you need and the conversations that shape your day.
From the news desk to the digital space, we have got you covered. I'm Pauline Verzosa and welcome to Morning Matters.
The southwest monsoon or habagat brought continuous rains that triggered flooding in several parts of Metro Manila. Here's the report.
Continuous rains brought by the southwest monsoon or habagat caused flooding in several parts of the national capital region. In Quezon City, residents of Barangay Bagong Silangan rushed to save whatever belongings they could as flood waters rose in their community. Some chose to evacuate for their safety, while others stayed behind to guard their homes. Meanwhile, resident Marianne rushed home from work after learning that floodwaters had reached her house.
Lubog na yung bahay namin eh. Buti kamo yung mga anak ko nakalikas na. Titingnan ko kung ano, yung mga gamit ko, sabi na itaas naman daw. Pero titingnan ko pa po.
Authorities are also closely monitoring La Mesa Dam, which is nearing its spilling level.
Malaki ang epekto kasi may mga low-lying areas na surrounding La Mesa Dam na talagang flood-prone area. So, kailangan talaga silang ma-advisean at magawa ng preemptive or forced evacuation in case na magbigay ng notice yung La Mesa Dam pag mag-spill na sila.
In Parañaque, residents of Purok 3 in Barangay San Isidro worked together to rescue their neighbors after a creek overflowed, sending floodwaters above waist level. They said flooding has been a problem year after year, but authorities have yet to find a lasting solution.
Wala pong nangyayari sa namin dito. Kasi lagi pong tumataas talaga yung baha. Ang masasabi ko lang po sa mga nakaupo diyan, gumalaw-galaw kayo, imulat nyo po yung mga mata nyo. Kayo po mga nakahiga sa maayos, kami po ito, nag-evacuate, hindi makatulog ng maayos.
A rider was also seen crossing chest-deep floodwaters along San Andres Street, still wearing his helmet. He said he was caught in the heavy rain while on his way home. And in neighboring Las Piñas, parts of Tuazon along Zapote Road were submerged, forcing residents and motorists to make their way through the flooded streets.
Now, the habagat continues to bring heavy rains across parts of Luzon, with some areas still at risk of flooding and landslides. And to give us the latest, we now have Pag-asa weather specialist Charmaine Varilla. Charmaine, ano na ba ang latest dito sa habagat?
Yes po, magandang umaga din sa inyo, maging sa ating mga tagapakinigan naritong ulat sa lagay ng panahon. Patuloy pa rin yung epekto ng habagat sa buong Luzon at kanlurang bahagi ng Visayas. Magdudulot nga yan ng patuloy na malalakas na mga pag-ulan sa Benguet, Zambales at Bataan. Samantalang pabugso-bugso mga pag-ulan naman ang dadalhin nito sa Metro Manila, Ilocos Region, nalalabing bahagi ng Cordillera, Nueva Vizcaya, Tarlac, Nueva Ecija, Pampanga, Bulacan, Rizal, Cavite, Batangas, Oriental Mindoro at Occidental Mindoro. Asahan din natin yung matataas na tsansa ng mga pag-ulan dadalhin ng habagat dito sa Western Visayas, nalalabing bahagi ng Cagayan Valley, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Camarines Norte at Camarines Sur na dadalhin ng habagat. At sa nalalabing bahagi ng ating bansa, localized thunderstorm naman ang siyang iiral. Ngayong araw din, pinakamalakas sa mga pag-ulan sa Benguet kung saan aabot ng more than 200 millimeters. Samantalang 100 to 200 millimeters naman sa may Zambales, Bataan at Occidental Mindoro. Kaya iba yung pag-iingat sa ating mga kababayan dahil yung ganitong dami ng mga pag-ulan dito ay maaaring magdulot ng malawakang pagbaha at pagguho ng lupa. Samantalang 50 to 100 millimeters naman ang mga pag-ulan ng asahan sa buong Ilocos Region, malahing bahagi ng Cordillera, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, kasama ang Oriental Mindoro. Kahit na sabihin po natin na 50 to 100 millimeters sa mga pag-ulan pa rin yan, ay huwag magpakampante dahil maaaring magdulot yan ng localized flooding dala nga ng patuloy na mga pag-ulan nitong nakaraang araw. At sa magiging kalagayan ng ating kalagayan dito sa may bahagi ng ating karagatan, meron po tayong nakataas na gale warning dito nga sa may extreme northern Luzon, maging dito sa may Zambales at Bataan at kanlurang bahagi ng Ilocos Norte at Pangasinan. Kaya nabisuhan po natin lahat ng sasakyang pandagat na kumaan ay paliban muna ang paglalayag dito dahil delikado ang pagtaas ng mga pag-alon. At sa lalabing bahagi nga ng karagatan ng ating bansa. Although wala tayong nakataas na gale warning, ay magiging katamtaman hanggang sa matataas ang mga pag-alon. Kaya iba yung pag-iingat sa papalaot pa rin ngayong araw. Yan ang latest mula dito sa Pag-asa Weather Forecasting Center. Charmaine Varilla nag-uulat.
Ms. Charmaine, para po mas malinaw sa ating mga kapatid na nanonood ngayon, hanggang kailan po nila mararanasan itong mga matitinding pag-ulan sa kanilang mga lugar?
Yes, po sa nakikita natin ay posible pa pong magpatuloy yung ganitong mga significant na mga pag-ulan, especially dito sa may kanlurang bahagi ng Luzon. Pero pagdating ng Wednesday, Thursday, nakikitaan po natin ng bahagyang paghina ng mga pag-ulan dito sa may malaking bahagi ng Luzon. Though sa western, medyo may mga malalakas pa dyan ng mga pag-ulan. Tapos, after po nan, muli uling lalakas yung mga pag-ulan sa malaking bahagi muli ng Luzon pagsapit ng weekend.
Charmaine, ano yung mga factors na nagko-contribute kung bakit ganito kalakas ang habagat ngayon? And meron ba tayong pinagmamasdan sa labas ng Philippine Area of Responsibility?
Yes po, yung nararanasan po natin ngayon na malalakas na mga pag-ulan ay dala ng enhancement ng habagat nitong si Bagyong Dolphin. At nakita po natin na itong si Bagyong Dolphin ay nakalandfall sa silangang bahagi ng China at ina-expect natin na sa mga susunod na araw ay pwede na yung humina at tuluyan ng malusaw. Samantalang after po nan ay posibleng ang hihila po na susunod sa habagat ay ito namang si Tropical Storm Peilu na nasa labas po ng ating Philippine Area of Responsibility at nasa layong 2,515 km east o silangan ng extreme northern Luzon. Kaya naman po, pagsapit ng weekend ay nakikitaan pa rin natin ang muling paglakas po ng habagat.
Charmaine, itong pag-ulan ay dahil nga sa habagat, ano? Makukumpuran nyo ba ito doon sa naranasan din natin noong 2024 na pinalakas din ng habagat ni Karina, pati last year, ano, nung kay Krising?
Yes po, nakikita po natin na ganito po yung mga impacts ng mga bagyo na tumataas or lumalapit dito sa may part ng Luzon, ay posible po talaga yung maghila ng habagat, lalo na po kung yung mga intensity po niya umaabot po ng more than tropical storm category. So, expect po natin na kapag may mga bagyo na lumalapit po sa ating bansa, ay posible po talaga yung enhancement ng habagat po natin.
At Charmaine, may possibility ba nung tinatawag na Fujiwara effect between dito sa mga typhoon na binabantayan ng Pag-asa?
So nakikita po natin ay malayo po yung ganyang posibilidad kasi medyo malayo na rin po yung distansya sa pagitan nitong dalawang bagyo. Itong ang nauna na na-mention natin na si Dolphin, nandito na sa China. Tapos yung isa naman, nasa labas pa po ng ating PAR at moving eastward, papalayo po sa PAR po natin.
Alright, maraming salamat para sa mga update na yan. That was Pag-asa Weather Specialist, Charmaine Varilla.
The water level at Marikina River is now at second alarm after reaching 16 meters. For the latest, we have mobile journalist Evan Tarinque. Evan, kamusta naman ang sitwasyon dyan?
Cheska, pansamantalang tumila yung pag-uulan dito sa Marikina. Pero sa kabila niyan, nananatiling nasa second alarm o nasa 16 meters pa rin yung water level dito nga sa Marikina River. Ito nga, makikita nyo sa aking likuran, pakita natin yung current situation dito, no? Makikita natin, maputik pa rin yung tubig na dumadaloy dito sa Marikina at doon nga sa makikita natin, doon sa mga level na yan at pumapatak pa rin sa 16 meters or second alarm yung level ng tubig. Pero sa kabila niyan, andito pa rin yung ilang mga kapatid natin, no, na nakaantabay, nagbabantay at sinisilip yung sitwasyon dito sa Marikina River. Pero sa mga oras na ito, makikita naman natin itong kinakatayuan natin. No? Usually kasi, pag pumatak ng second alarm, yung tubig, usually basa na to at meron ng tubig dito sa kinakatayuan natin. Pero ngayon, tuyo pa rin naman at hindi naman umapaw masyado yung tubig dito nga sa Marikina River. Pero sa kabila niyan, marami pa rin yung mga kapatid natin na pumunta sa mga evacuation center. No? Doon nga sa may Malanday Elementary School, as of 7 a.m. nakuha nating number is nasa 660 plus pa rin yung mga pamilyang nananatili sa Malanday Elementary School. Pero karamihan sa kanila, ayon doon sa camp leader, bumabalik na at umuwi na sa kanilang mga tahanan dahil bumaba nga yung water level na pumata nga doon sa 17.5 meters yung peak niya kahapon around 5 p.m. Pero so far, ayon doon sa mga nakausap nating residente na doon nagstay, pansamantalang nanatili sa mga evacuation center, since bumaba yung water level, nag-umpisa na rin sila maglinis ng kanilang mga tahanan. No? So far, ang open na evacuation center ngayon is nasa 28 at naglagay na rin ng nasa 20 mga boats itong Marikina LGU doon sa mga low-lying areas kung saan nga madalas na binabaha sa oras na tumaas yung tubig mula dito sa Marikina River. Cheska.
Evan, yung mga nag-evacuate, kasi dahil sa City Alert System ng Marikina, pag second alarm, dapat mag-evacuate pag umabot ng 17.4 meters yung water level nila. For the residents na mga nagpunta sa evacuation centers, was this voluntary evacuation or was it a forced evacuation?
Cheska, alam mo, karamihan sa kanila, no? Nung nag-first alarm pa lang daw talaga, pinili na nilang pumunta sa mga evacuation center, no? Kasi karamihan nga, lalo na yung mga senior citizen, pati na rin yung mga kapatid nating PWD, no? May hirapan daw talaga sila kasing lumikas sa oras na pumalo nga ng second alarm o yung or ng third alarm yung water level sa Marikina River, no? Pero Cheska, ngayon nga, since nasa second alarm pa rin, 16 meters yan, ibig sabihin kasi nung second alarm, kinakailangan na mag-evacuate. No? Ang forced evacuation kasi natin, Cheska, dito sa Marikina, pag pumatak na siya ng 18 meters, yun na isasagawa yung first evacuation. So pagdating pa lang nung first alarm, preparedness pa lang yan, maghanda pa lang yung mga kapatid natin na lumikas, pero nasa sa kanila na yan kung gusto na nila pumunta doon sa mga evacuation center dahil binubuksan na rin na yan ng Marikina LGU sa oras na tumunog yung first alarm. Cheska.
Evan, baka naman pwede mo iikot sa amin ngayon yung pinakasitwasyon ng Marikina River. Sabi mo nga, second alarm ito, pero para sa mas magandang perspective, ano ang itsura ng second alarm? At saka baka may data ka rin kung saan lugar pa sa Marikina ang until now lubog sa baha.
Sige Angela, ito pakita natin, medyo bumuhos na ulit kasi yung pag-uulan dito sa Marikina. Ito, makikita natin, current situation, Marikina River, ito maputik pa rin yung tubig na dumadaan nga. No? Ito kasi yung downstream. No? So karamihan ng tubig na ito ay galing doon sa kabundukan ng Rodriguez Rizal. No? So kaya makikita natin, kulay putik talaga. At itong yung alarm, ito yung makikita natin dito, ito sa ilalim, yung alarm system. No? Currently, nakikita natin nasa 16 meters. So, second alarm yan. At pag lumipat tayo dito, no, makikita natin yung ilang mga kapatid natin na nag-aantay, nagpapatila ng ulan at nag-monitor ng kasalukuyang sitwasyon dito sa ilog. No. Yung ilan niya, ito makikita natin. Yung ganito sitwasyon, no, Angela, hindi na bago to. Talagang marami talaga pumupunta dito sa ilog pag ganitong mataas yung water level. Ito, yung ilan, sinusulit at nangingisda ng kung ano mang makukuha nila dito. Kanina may nakita tayo, parang hito ata yung kanilang namingwit dito sa ilog ng Marikina. Kanina, Angela.
Okay, Ivan, ano naman yung mga daan na impassable as of this moment sa mga motorista?
Pauline, so far, no, wala pa namang namamonitor na sarado or impassable para doon nga sa ating mga motorista, no? Pero so far, no, kahapon kasi nagkaroon ng problema dito sa Marikina, sa may barangay Tumana dahil nga doon sa hindi gumaganang pumping stations, no? Pero tumawag naman na yung LGU sa DPWH at sa contractor nito at kailangan na nga at nagbadala na nga ng mobile na pumping machine itong DPWH at itong kanilang contractor para nga masolusyonan yung pagbaha nga dito sa may barangay Tumana. Pero sa mga oras na ito, Pauline, wala pa naman tayong namamonitor na mga daan na hindi madadaanan sa oras na ito, Pauline.
Alright, thank you, mobile journalist Evan Tarinque.
Malacanang has suspended all face-to-face classes in public and private schools in parts of Luzon due to inclement weather. The suspension covers Metro Manila, Ilocos Sur, La Union, Pangasinan, Benguet, Abra, Zambales, Bataan, Tarlac, Pampanga, Bulacan, Rizal, Cavite, Batangas, Occidental Mindoro, and Oriental Mindoro. Government offices in these areas will also shift to work-from-home arrangements. Meanwhile, local chief executives may also order the localized suspension of classes and government work in other areas if necessary.
Nearly 100,000 Meralco customers lost power as heavy habagat rains triggered flooding across parts of Luzon. Meralco said most of the affected customers are in Cavite, with outages also reported in Bulacan, Metro Manila, Laguna, Quezon, Rizal, and Batangas. The power distributor said crews are working to restore electricity once conditions are safe. Customers are also warned to stay away from down power lines and electrical equipment submerged in floodwaters. All right, don't go away. Morning Matters will be back after a short break.
Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, the habagat continues to leave a trail of death and destruction across parts of Luzon. Landslides, flooding, and other rain-related incidents have already killed several people, forced residents to evacuate, and damaged homes and infrastructure. More details in this report.
The southwest monsoon continues to batter parts of Luzon, triggering landslides, floods, and other incidents across several provinces. In Baguio City, 3 people were killed while 4 others survived after a landslide buried several homes in Barangay Gizad, Surong. 3 houses were buried. The Baguio City DRRMO says at least 5 people are still being searched for. Search and rescue operations continue despite heavy rains. In Antipolo City, a delivery rider died after a utility pole in a tree fell on him during heavy rain. CCTV footage shows the victim had stopped to take shelter from the rain when the accident happened. He was rushed to the hospital but later died. In Bulacan, several areas were flooded as water levels along the Angat River quickly rose. In Barangay Caingin, San Rafael, a dog was stranded in floodwaters while a van is stalled in the middle of a flooded road. Residents worked together to move the vehicle to safety. Homes and other facilities in San Rafael were also flooded. Flooding also hit several areas in Pampanga. In San Fernando, floodwaters reached knee level inside Santo Niño Parish, nearly submerging some of the church pews. In Magalang, barangay officials cleared trash and other debris blocking waterways. In Macabebe, high tide and heavy rains flooded several barangays. Some vehicles stalled after trying to cross flooded roads, while several residents have already evacuated. Some residents say their communities have been underwater for nearly 2 weeks. In Batangas, 3 deaths have been confirmed by the provincial DRRMO. One victim was electrocuted in Lipa City, another drowned in Batangas City, while a third fell and hit a riprap during a landslide in Santa Teresita. Widespread flooding also hit the province. In Lipa, motorists worked together to carry motorcycles and tricycles across raging flood waters. The Philippine Red Cross also rescued 4 residents who were trapped inside their home in Barangay Maraboy. In Binyan, Laguna, an overflowing river flooded several areas. Water levels have since gone down, but authorities continue to monitor the situation. And in Barangay de la Paz, knee-deep flood waters did not stop the funeral of a resident. The coffin was placed on styrofoam and carried across the flooded area before the funeral procession continued by vehicle to the cemetery. Based on the NDRRMC's latest tally as of August 9, 8 people were reported dead, 7 injured, and 1 missing due to the habagat. The fatalities include victims of rock slides, landslides, drowning, and electrocution.
Now, flooding has affected several areas in Cavite and Rizal amid continued rains brought by the southwest monsoon. To give us the latest situation in the region, we are joined by Mark Rafael Sasutona, Information Officer of the Office of Civil Defense, Calabarzon. Magandang umaga po sa inyo. Thank you for joining us.
Hello ma'am, magandang umaga po. Isang maulang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Well, it is indeed a difficult weekend for many of us, Filipinos, because of the severe flooding in many areas of our country. Now, what is the current situation on the ground right now? At ano pa po yung mga areas na talagang binabantayan po natin ngayon?
Currently ma'am, we are experiencing in different provinces po ng light to moderate rains. Oftentimes na lang po, medyo mas mahina na po siya compared to yesterday. But definitely po, we have monitoring po ng ating mga IOR dun sa part specifically in Laguna, provinces of Laguna, Cavite, and Batangas and Rizal. So they are reported po nung ating mga flooded areas, certainly in areas po ng Cavite, in Batangas and in Rizal. So aside from that, ma'am, continuously monitoring po tayo dun sa mga residents po natin na nagkaroon po ng evacuation po sa mga areas po na nagkaroon ng evacuation.
Sir, may official report or latest figures na po ba kayo pagdating sa casualty, sa mga injured, pati na rin po sa mga missing persons?
With regards po dun sa reported injured, we have 2 reported po in Cavite, 1 in Cavite and 1 in Rizal, in Naik po and in Rizal po. And dun po sa ating list po ng casualties, we have details but definitely this is subject for validation po ng MDM cluster. We have 6 actually, ma'am, monitored in Calabarzon, but definitely these are all subject for validation po ng MDM cluster. Though ito po ay tinatriangulate po ng ating mga agencies para po makonfirm kung related po in our current po na weather system po na iniiral, which is the Habagat.
Sir, ano po yung mga locations na naka-record na po ng mga landslides and ano po yung mga critical zones na kailangan i-monitor?
Actually, ma'am, we have reported po in Rizal, the Montalban po yung biggest po natin. May reported mo tayo ng mga rock slides. Sa Antipolo din, ma'am, may mga reported po. In Cavite, meron po sa General Marian Alvarez. Based po ito dun sa ating latest situation report to Manhattan. And also, we are monitoring landslide in soil erosion in Santo Tomas. We have reported po rock slide in Batangas City, and we monitor din po yung collapse in Antipolo, and also soil erosion in Taytay, Rizal po, and also San Mateo.
Well, sa ngayon po, sir, ilan na po ang naitalang affected na families po, Dahil nga po dito sa sunod-sunod na mga pag-ulan, ilan po ang nasa evacuation center? At tanong na rin po namin, sir, kung meron na rin po ba tayong initial assessment doon sa damage to infrastructure and agriculture?
Ma'am, based dun sa latest situation report namin, itong affected population details po natin is based on the latest provided po ng drone report ng DSWD. So we have monitored po from Cavite 13 LGUs, from Laguna 7 LGUs, 21 LGUs in Batangas, 10 LGUs in Rizal, and 5 LGUs in Quezon. So based po dun sa affected population, there are a total of 25,322 families composed of 91,011 individuals from the 286 barangays in Calabarzon na monitored po na affected. Yes, ma'am.
Alright, we will...
Sige, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sir Mark Rafael Sasutona, Information Officer of the Office of Civil Defense,
Thank you so
Calabarzon.
much.
Heavy habagat rains also affect parts of Rizal. Mobile journalist Jazz Paredes joins us live from the municipality of Teresa. Jazz, ano yung sitwasyon dyan ngayong umaga? Jazz? Jazz, naka-mute ka yata.
Ayan, Cheska.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Cheska, nandito tayo sa Sitio Quarry 2 kung saan makikita nyo sa aking likuran itong spillway na kung saan ito ay nagko-connected dito sa barangay May Iba, Teresa Rizal. At kung makikita natin, Cheska, no, medyo pababa lang yung bahaging yan ay malakas ang agos ng tubig at kung saan hindi siya passable until this morning. Katotoo niya na Cheska ay ngayon medyo maaraw na at maganda na yung lagay ng panahon, pero dahil nga kanina nga bandang madaling araw ay tumaas yung tuli yung tubig matapos tumaas o matapos lumakas ulit yung ulan. Pero sa ngayon, Cheska, we can see na wala na tayong ulan at okay na rin yung ating lagay ng panahon. Pero sa ngayon, wala na rin tayong warning level ng heavy rainfall warning at nananatili na lang na light to moderate yung rains na ating inaasahan. Bukod dyan, Cheska, kung makikita naman natin dito sa kabilang side, dahil nga ito ay hinarangan na, meron na rin ditong police line na nakaabang upang maiwasan na nga yung pagdaan ng ilang mga motorista dahil ito rin yung isa sa mga main road na nagkokonekta patungo sa Teresa, papunta sa Antipolo Road. At yung iba nating mga motorista na papasok sa trabaho ay umikot na lamang ng daan upang hindi na nga makadaan dito dahil makikita naman natin sa sobrang lakas ng agos ng tubig ay not possible na at delikado na para daanan ng mga motorista. Cheska.
Alright, thank you, mobile journalist Jazz Paredes.
Now, don't go away because Money Talks with Kathy Yang is up next to get you ahead of the markets. Stay tuned to One News.
about whether the recovery can withstand higher fuel costs, El Nino, and typhoons. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Kiko Laurel joins us live. And the country's exports of semiconductor and electronic products could reach a new high as demand surges to support data centers and AI adoption. Before we go to our top stories, at least 8 people have died from the effects of the southwest monsoon or habagat and tropical cyclones Luis and Maymay. As of 6 a.m. Philippine time, the NDRRMC reported 3 deaths in Rizal and Batangas and 2 in Benguet. The incidents involved landslides, rock slides, drowning, electrocution, and a fallen tree. 1 person remains missing in Batangas. 8 others were reported injured in Benguet, Cavite, and Rizal. Authorities said these figures are still subject to validation. Over the weekend, continuous habagat rains caused flooding in parts of Metro Manila. In Quezon City, residents of Bagong Silangan rushed to save their belongings as floodwaters rose. Authorities are also monitoring La Mesa Dam, which is nearing its spilling level.
Malaki ang epekto kasi may mga low-lying areas na surrounding La Mesa Dam na talagang flood-prone area. Kailangan talaga silang ma-advisean at magawa ng preemptive or forced evacuation in case na magbigay ng notice yung La Mesa Dam pag magsispill na sila.
In Parañaque, residents of Purok 3 in Barangay San Isidro helped rescue neighbors after a creek overflowed, sending floodwaters above waist level. In Las Piñas, parts of Tuazon along Zapote Road were also submerged. Meantime, Malacanang has suspended all face-to-face classes in public and private schools in parts of Luzon due to the inclement weather. Government offices in the affected areas will also shift to work-from-home arrangements, while local chief executives may order additional suspensions if necessary. Stay tuned to One News for the latest developments on the weather and the floods. Motorists may get a reprieve tomorrow due to a looming big-time oil price rollback. Jetty Petroleum President Leo Bellas estimates gasoline and diesel may go down by 4.50 and 5 pesos per liter this Tuesday. These figures are based on 4 days of trading at the Mine of Platts, Singapore. The Department of Energy will announce the final adjustments today. Meantime, over 8 million customers of Meralco will also be affected, with power rates expected to go down by 59 cents per kilowatt hour this August. That figure represents the ERC ordered refund of 9.5 billion pesos worth of tariff over collections divided over 6 months. But the refund will partly offset by higher feed-in tariff allowance or FIT-all and Meralco's collection of 8.7 billion pesos worth of under-recoveries. Meralco spokesman Josel Darriaga hopes that the refund is enough to bring relief to customers given the lower electricity demand in the Luzon grid. Overseas, Iran and Oman are close to agreeing on a new shipping route in the Strait of Hormuz. But Tehran insists it will not reopen the strait unless the U.S. meets certain conditions. These include ending attacks against Iran and its proxies, removing a naval blockade in the Gulf, and releasing frozen Iranian assets. In an interview with Fox News Channel Saturday in America, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says Washington's actions will depend on the changes that Iran is willing to do.
Reduce their, what you might call their asymmetric military abilities. And right now we're trying to see if they're willing to make the kind of long-term changes that would be necessary to have a better relationship with the United States. And if not, that's fine too. We're just going to keep on applying the pressure that we can apply.
As of 8:30 a.m. Philippine time, benchmark Brent crude is trading at about $85 a barrel, up 1.1%. West Texas Intermediate sitting at $79 per barrel, up 0.9%. In other news, Philippine semiconductor and electronics exports could hit a record $54 billion this year as demand for AI and data center components continues to grow. That's according to Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Foundation, Inc. SAPI President Danilo Lachica says the group has raised its 2026 export growth forecast to 10% from an initial 5%. This, he said, as electronics exports jumped over 16% in 2025 to nearly $50 billion. Lachica also said the Philippines may not produce AI chips, but it supplies support equipment for AI systems and data centers. Meantime, Hong Kong remains the top market for Philippine electronics exports, followed by the US and China. China, meanwhile, is the country's top source of electronics imports, particularly silicon wafers. The Philippines currently accounts for about 5% of the global semiconductor market and 1% of the electronics manufacturing services markets. The benchmark PSEI is seen staying range-bound this week. On Friday, Philippine shares rose 0.2% to close at 6,290. Week on week, stocks were up about 0.9%. Japheth Tantiangco of PhilStocks Financial says investor sentiment remains to be cautious over the Middle East war. Investors are also digesting weaker than forecast GDP, which came in at 2.3% for the second quarter. 10-year government bond yields ticked up to 7.27%. Agriculture, forestry, and fishing contributed to the economy, the fastest growing major sector on a seasonally adjusted quarter-on-quarter basis, expanding 2.7% in the second quarter. Favorable weather, stronger palay output, and gains in livestock, poultry, and fisheries helped lift farm production. But farm production growth slowed to 2.9% from 6% a year earlier, raising questions about whether the recovery can withstand higher fuel costs, El Nino, and possible typhoons. The government has said it will respond with fuel and fertilizer support, strategic food buffers, assistance for farmers and fishers, and the El Nino Strategic National Action Plan. With us now for more is Department of Agriculture Secretary Francisco Kiko Laurel. It's good seeing you again and hearing from you. Sec Kiko, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so Sec Kiko, first up, the rains have gone continuously over the weekend. What is the status of our agriculture, the initial assessment you have on the potential damages of Habagat?
Well, definitely, this is a minor setback in our production plans and the overall picture. And so far, the damage is about 135 million in value. 6,000 families affected, 4,500 hectares damaged with around less product of around 4,500 metric tons. Of course, fisheries is also affected and not yet quantified. But more, it's not more on damage, more on production, which malakas yung panahon and they can't harvest. So that's the main issue for fisheries as of the moment.
Right. Given the production damage, the initial assessment is showing that there has been an impact in production. What is the plan now for the government in terms of extending financial assistance?
Well, we have a sure loan system wherein each beneficiary can loan up to 25,000, and of course the DA will be sending out seeds, fertilizers for rice, corn, and vegetables. Of course, livestock industry will also be given some medicines and feeds, among others.
So how does this impact production going forward then? Because favorable weather got us ahead in the numbers for the second quarter. How then going forward with Habagat and then the El Nino, which is the next biggest risk?
Well, considering the growth or the moves that we have made, we are still expecting a good harvest towards this last half harvest season. Of course, what we cannot really predict is the weather. So that's the major challenge. But so far, so good. We have enough buffer stock of rice, corn, sugar. Of course, the poultry industry is quite healthy. Major issue is pork, but we're looking at the cold storage capacities of the Philippines in terms of how much pork we have. We have enough. We have ample supply technically, so we're still food secure. Of course, but the coming El Nino this November, that might affect us the first quarter of next year. So this year, so far, so good.
All right, so what are the plans then? You've got a national strategic plan for the upcoming El Nino. Is that already fully operational now?
Well, we are prepared, and we will be doing a production optimization where we will give more support and more emphasis on the areas that will not be affected by El Nino. Of course, irrigation management is very critical, and luckily, with these rains, the positive side of these rains is that our dams are almost full again. So that's something that is uh, very welcome in spite of the gloomy weather.
So which provinces are expected to be hardest hit by the coming El Nino?
Well, Ilocos area, the north, the central Luzon, western Visayas, Mindoro, western Mindoro will be really affected as far as the coordination, DOST, Pag-asa, and national disaster is concerned, that's the major areas that will be affected.
And because of those expectations, are you now extending help to what may be the worst hit by El Nino?
We are prepared to give assistance to the worst hit. We have no choice but to have to issue some cash assistance for the slightly hit. We are continuously giving more fertilizers, more seeding per hectare we will increase. Among others, the main issue actually is the moment is more of the transport and the fuel that will affect prices and intention to plant.
Indeed. Talk to us about that then, because prices are again heading higher. What is the worst case expectation then? And might there be extraordinary measures that the DA will have to do to keep prices rising?
As of the moment, I think we have things under control. For our rice, we have basically have enough buffer stock to ride out this El Nino until the end of this year. Although, and then by September, we'll be harvesting, our harvest season will start. So we expect, quite a good harvest, although the palay prices has to be a bit more elevated than the previous harvest season's prices. So we're targeting a palay price wet of 21 pesos from the previous harvest, the target was only 17 to 18 pesos. So we expect to have a 5 peso more, a better price for our farmers so that they have their planting intention and they will be able to afford the increased prices of fertilizer also moving forward.
So what happens now, Sec, to the 50 peso price gap? Will there be an extension, or will you let that just lapse?
From our calculation, the average last year of rice was about 44 to 45 pesos. We believe that with the 50 peso range for both local and imported, that as long as we hit that, I think we'll be okay. We're at that level now, so that is the level that I think the farmers can still get a healthy amount of, not lose money at least, the worst case scenario.
Right. What about rice imports, though? What is the direction there and the potential that it could affect farm gate prices?
Well, for the rice importation, we already imported 3.4 million metric tons as of last week. The country only needs 3.8 to 4 million tons. So basically, we front-loaded most of our rice requirement for this year intentionally due to we have to make sure that the high fertilizer prices and the gloomy El Nino, we will have enough supply. So far we have done that. So I guess we're secure. We are hoping in coordination with the local importers that during the harvest season in mid-September to end of November, there will be a slowdown. We don't need to import as much rice anymore since we front-loaded what we require for the whole year. So that should make paddy prices stable for our farmers going into the harvest season.
All right, so what is stable and fair? What is fair pricing then for the rice millers? Because I know that there is a conversation going between the DA and the rice millers themselves.
Well, for the rice millers, we've been discussing and we're continuously meeting with them that, if we can maintain a buying price of 25 dry and or 21 wet, 25, 26, so we'll be able to maintain a 50 to 52 peso price range for our rice towards the end, until end of the year and hopefully until March next year.
All right, exports are an economic bright spot so far. The DA is working with the DTI to open more markets, but which agricultural commodities do you think that the Philippines can expand for export without compromising domestic supply and affordability?
Well, we have identified 13 export champions. Of course, the traditional coconut is there, pineapple, banana, but then we've added dragon fruit, pomelo, durian, ube, among others, no, and okra. So I guess so we're pushing for all of that so that by end of the Marcos administration, we should see that more of our agricultural products, not limited to the top three, will have higher volumes, especially our Philippine mangoes.
Well, I'm going to pick out ube because that's been the new star or superstar that Trade Secretary Roque had mentioned for Philippine exports, but local supply had been limited so far. So what is the plan with DTI to expand production and ensure that our farmers do benefit from rising demand?
I guess as of the moment for the market is there, the market is available. So the main challenge is production. But then producing, we have enough land. We have what we lack severely is the planting material. So the thrust of the DA from this year and hopefully till middle of next year is to expand the nurseries and produce maybe 5 times more planting material than 5 to 10 times more planting material needed for our farmers and of course who will end up supplying our processors. So that's the thrust now, multiplier farms so that we can supply our the grow out farms with more ube planting material.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the update, Secretary Francisco Laurel of the Department of Agriculture. You are watching Money Talks. Coming up, fast-tracking the government's catch-up plan in the second half to restore the Philippine growth momentum. So what are the odds of a recovery? We speak with Assistant Professor Sir Percival Peña Reyes of Ateneo de Manila University. And the Senate cancels today the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Kathy Yang. There will be no impeachment trial at the Senate today, August 10th. Senate President Win Gatchalian announced the cancellation of both the impeachment trial and plenary session set for today, Monday. These will resume tomorrow, August 11th. Senate officials and employees have also been allowed to work from home today due to the expected heavy rains. Let's take a quick check in the Philippine peso and see how that's open Monday. It is stronger, 60.85 to the dollar. The peso slid 8.5 centavos Friday to settle at 60.90 against the greenback. The local unit may rise this week due to weaker than expected U.S. jobs report. But traders will continue to monitor developments in the Middle East. Mike Ricafort of RCBC says the peso moving between 60.60 and 61.60 to the dollar. Checking in on the markets overseas, U.S. futures edged lower in overnight trading. The Dow falls 0.2%, S&P 500 slides 0.1%, and the Nasdaq sheds less than 0.1%. Asian markets are mostly gaining ground in early trading Monday. Japan's Nikkei 225 is up 1.3%. South Korea's Kospi rises 1%, and Australia's ASX 200 falls over 0.25%. U.S. markets rose last Friday, despite the U.S. economy losing 23,000 jobs in July. The Nasdaq gained 1.3%, S&P advanced 0.6%, closing at another record high, and the Dow climbed about 0.33%. The Philippine economy grew 2.3% in the second quarter, with services as the main driver. Wholesale and retail trade, education, manufacturing, government spending, and stronger export supported growth, but not enough to offset weak investment and slower consumption. Investment contracted 9.2%, while household consumption grew 2.8%, its slowest non-pandemic pace since 2010. The oil shock from the Middle East conflict hit an economy already reeling from the after effects of the flood control corruption scandal. Our next guest predicted second quarter GDP to have turned up faster at 3.2%. While nearly 1 percentage off the 2Q GDP result, his July inflation forecast was spot on at 6.2%, one of 4 of the 21 economists and analysts surveyed by Business World just before the release of the twin data. Well, with us now for more is Assistant Professor Sir Percival Peña Reyes of Ateneo de Manila University. It's good seeing you again, Doc Sir. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Kathy. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so how much of a revision did you have to make on your GDP forecast for the year, given that you expected faster but it turned out slower?
It was really quite a surprise. If we will take a look at the forecast submitted, 2.3%, as it turns out, is really closer to the more pessimistic side of the forecasts. It's a significant downside surprise, actually, especially since consensus was expecting something materially stronger. So the median was 2.8%. So because of
when we
that,
got inflation, you got the July inflation forecast spot on. So have you revised your forecast or kept it where it is?
well, pretty much still where it is. Perhaps there's going to be a slight uptick. We are seeing 6.3% for the next month, for this month, mainly because of oil shocks. There's a lot of uncertainty there, okay? And also El Nino. Okay? But the average for the entire year, we're seeing inflation averaging at around 5.4% for this year.
Still well above the 4% ceiling of the Bangko Sentral. So where does that take your GDP forecast then, given that inflation is going to pick up, as you just said?
Well, yes, we had to, of course, do an adjustment, and it's really going to be a downgrade. We were expecting, actually, for the entire year that we'd average 4%. Okay, but for this year, in light of recent GDP performance, it's going to be around 3.1%, which means to say that we're going to have a larger negative output gap. So it's going to be about from 1.9% previously, our output gap now is going to be minus 2.6%. So it's quite a big impact on GDP forecasting.
And also on your projections for stagflation, I mean, as it is, the Philippines now has the slowest growth and the fastest inflation among major ASEAN economies. DepDevSec RC Balisacan, when asked last Friday if we were any closer to stagflation, answered in the negative. But let's just listen to his exact words for a moment.
Yes.
I don't think so. we are seeing now some positive developments moving us out of the situation of the low growth. As I think a key factor here is our ability to move public investments, because we see and we notice that private investment is also very sensitive to public investments. So as we are able to get public investments, you would expect the private sector response also to improve and further boost the confidence that the private sector has on the economy. So I don't think that we are at that stage.
Are we at that stage now that we're seeing even slower growth and faster inflation, given that we may also have a wage price spiral and also the impact of the excise taxes plan for vices?
Yes, could you repeat, Kathy? I think I lost you somewhere in the beginning of your question.
Do you think we're closer to a stagflationary environment, given that we do still have a potential wage price spiral from the 85 peso wage hike,
Yeah.
if that indeed proceeds, and also if indeed excise taxes were going to be implemented in our vices?
Well, I think on growth grounds alone, okay, I don't think there is. I agree with the SecRC that maybe we're still not yet there, but of course there is a risk still. Okay, it's going to be again a delicate balancing act, because on growth grounds alone, okay, we probably would have a stronger case for the central bank to ease, but it's currently balancing two competing objectives. Okay, so on the one hand, we have growth that has weakened sharply, so this probably would be a good argument to lower policy rates to support investment and consumption. While on the other hand, the BSP raised the policy rate by just 25 basis points in June to 4.75%. So we still have risk, higher oil prices, special depreciation, second round inflation effects, which brought the inflation outlook upward. But given this combination or recent combination of easing headline inflation, easing core inflation, and subdued economic activity, perhaps it would be more prudent for us to have a hold stance uh, in order to have a more balanced policy choice rather than have another rate hike, because it's going to be something that the central bank will probably need to consider, this trade-off between inflation and growth. So
Quickly,
we're
Doc, sir,
still not
it's still a
there.
hold
Yeah.
even though the excise taxes and vices go through, and if and when the 85 peso wage hike pushes on?
Yes, because of that combination of easing core inflation, easing headline inflation, and subdued economic activity. So other economists have also been saying this. Okay, but my colleague, fellow economists, there's one who mentioned that probably there might be a need to hike yet again because of um, risks involving the oil crisis and El Nino, okay, and also this wage hike. Okay, but if we are going to do so, okay, although other economists like myself have mentioned having a hold stance, okay, if we're going to do tightening, if the BSP deems it wise to do tightening still, okay, perhaps it ought to be calibrated at 25 basis points.
We'll
A
put you on
50 basis point, yeah, I'm sorry.
yes, we'll put you on the hold stance then. But thank you so much. It was
Yeah.
quite counterintuitive you said that, but appreciate the insight. Dr. Percival Peña Reyes of the Ateneo de Manila University. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Kathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a great day ahead.
Good morning mga kapatid. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, some of the so-called Maleta boys linked to former Congressman Zaldico are now temporarily free after posting bail. 10 former soldiers who identified themselves as Co's former bodyguards and bagmen were released from police custody in Las Piñas. 4 of the original 18 complainants have withdrawn their earlier claims, while the others are set to face perjury charges. But Ombudsman Boying Remulla said the recantations will not weaken their case, and he believes former Speaker Martin Romualdez's camp may be behind the reversal.
If they want to recant it, so be it. But it will be in court already. It doesn't weaken or strengthen. But of course, it just points out to the fact that there are people working on his behalf to obstruct the ends of justice.
You're saying po na posible na ang kampo po ni na Martin Romualdez ang nasa likod sa pagrekanto
Siyempre,
ng APA?
siyempre. Sino pa? Sino pa? Sino pa ba ibang makikinabang dyan pag nag-recant yan? O, di ba?
To help us understand the legal implications of these developments, we are joined by constitutional law expert, Attorney Ralph Sarmiento. Good morning, Attorney. Thank you for joining us again. It's nice to see you.
Yes, good morning.
All right, so before the rain, it's just a natural phenomenon for us. But right now, it's a constant reminder of the corruption and incompetence of government officials. Now, some of the so-called Maleta boys have recanted their allegations. How could this affect the investigation into the alleged flood control mess?
Well, it will have a big effect, no? Especially if they are key witnesses to the investigation. But and of course, it poses a credibility issue because if you will say that your previous statement was false, then how are we going to believe that your new statement will now be saying the truth? So it's a credibility issue, but ultimately it's a question of whether, because there will now be inconsistent or contradictory statements coming from the same witness. So ultimately it will be a question of which version of the affidavit or the statement can be independently corroborated by the evidence. So ultimately, we really have to follow the money trail, and look into the objective evidence.
Well, Attorney, following the recantation of some of these so-called Maleta boys, Ombudsman Boying Remulla was asked, will this weaken or strengthen their case? He said neither. Do you agree with that? Or magkakaroon po talaga ng implication itong pag-recant ng Maleta boys?
Well, it really depends. No, I'm sure the ombudsman has, is in possession of evidence on this matter. So if he says that he can independently, establish culpability in this particular case, then it's part of his constitutional duty to do so. I'm just saying that, of course, whenever there is a recantation, our jurisprudence is saying that these recantations must be looked upon with extreme caution, kasi we are now presented with contradictory statements, and of course, may talagang question of credibility yung harapin natin in this case.
Well, Attorney, let's start from, if these statements were made under pressure, under conditions that it's in exchange for something, and then now that they're also recanting, what are the legal implications of this if there are external factors that are affecting these recantations?
Well, for the witnesses, of course, it can be a question of perjury. Although recantation is not automatically an admission of perjury, the previous statements were automatically false, no? Because that the elements of perjury need to be independently established. So each one of them has to be independently established. Now, yung as to possible external pressure or inducement on the part of the witnesses, well, if it's only about, let's say, for example, paying them or promising them something, it can be a crime, or it can be a case of, let's say, there's a crime under PD 1829. So obstruction of justice can be material in this particular case. Now, if there is not, let's say, if there is no payment of money, but instead there is intimidation or coercion or force, it can also be a case of possible grave coercion under the revised penal code.
Attorney, can you just clarify how they can establish elements of perjury? Because to the people watching, it's easy to think na, okay, they recanted their statements, binabawi nila, so ibig sabihin nagsinungaling sila. How do you reconcile the public perception of how, these perjury cases are going to be handled?
Well, perjury kasi is lying under oath on something which is material. So you have to give the statement under oath, then it has to be false, then it has to be on a material fact. No? Like in this case, it must be crucial or critical to the investigation on the flood control scandal. The only problem is, for example, the element of falsehood. Kasi when you are faced with two contradictory statements, right, what we have right now, the investigators or the government on this particular case will have to prove which statement is false, because that's one of the elements of perjury. So if you cannot establish which element or which version of the statements is false, then it will be hard to establish the elements of perjury.
Well, attorney, from the very beginning that they have issued their statements regarding this allegation against Speaker Martin Romualdez at that time, people have already observed na medyo talagang may mga inconsistencies doon sa mga sinasabi nila. One of which, yung sinabi nila about Congresswoman Laila de Lima, yung timeline in which na nasa kulungan pa at that time, and of course yung mga model ng telepono, and a lot of things na inconsistency. Pero para po mas maintindihan ng public natin, hindi po ba pwedeng wag na lang isama yung mga statement nila, because nakikita po natin na parang hindi naman talaga, kumbaga, walang pinaninindigan yung kanilang mga sinasabi?
Well, it really depends on what the government now have with respect to the evidence in the flood control scandal. So ultimately, they will have to evaluate whether these statements are necessary or not, or whether they will be helpful in the course of the trial or investigation into this matter. But ultimately, we can say that statements, until they are tested in the crucibles of trial and subjected to cross-examination, are just considered hearsay. So ultimately, they need to be corroborated by other witnesses. They need to be corroborated by independent evidence. For example, yung money trail talaga, like for example, does the money really exist? Sino nag-withdraw? How was it delivered? May yung mga communication, like yung mga communication footprint nila, yung mga records, CCTV footages, all these things have to be looked upon para matingnan talaga kung if the statements can be corroborated.
Well, Attorney, Ombudsman Remulla has alluded to former Speaker Martin Romualdez of having a hand in the recantation. He did say na there are people working from his side trying to obstruct the ends of justice. What's your reaction to that, Attorney? I mean, is it a logical theory? Because after all, the former Speaker will benefit from the recantation of these Maleta boys.
Well, part of the constitutional duty and obligation, and of course power of the Ombudsman, is to conduct an investigation. And when conducting an investigation into the flood control scandal, if he feels there are elements or factors that are trying to interfere with this investigation, I think the ombudsman may look into this matter and may accuse people and investigate them as to whether or not there really is basis for saying that they are trying to interfere or obstruct with the current investigation into the flood control scandal.
All right, Attorney, the Las Piñas RTC Branch 200, they actually went on overtime to issue the release orders, but Attorney Baligod said that, the Las Piñas RTC conducted irregular and unusual process in setting bail, that they sat on the bail application until Friday. Can we get your thoughts on this? What are the legal implications? Why Attorney Baligod would say this?
That matter, I cannot comment on that. Parang I don't know the details of that particular matter concerning the grant of the bill. So I'd rather not comment on that.
Okay.
Well, Attorney, according to Attorney Levito Baligod, these so-called Maleta boys have delivered 805 million in kickbacks from irregular flood control projects. So that's about nearly 1 trillion pesos. And how come, if ever the statement is true, if that really happened, how come it did not, kumbaga parang, it did not cause, it did not raise red flag sa AMLAC? Kasi, di ba yung parang it could not have been withdrawn from banks and moved around the country without raising red flags from the AMLAC?
Well, those are exactly the questions that people are asking, and that every one of us want to know about. And I think that really has to be investigated. All this, yung mga red flags na to, and the lack of it, we really have to look into this matter. But I guess the flood control scandal, I think, should not circle around or should not focus only on the Maleta boys. I think there is something greater than this, and it should not be, parang it's trying to distract us to focus on this particular issue when there is still something much to be investigated into the flood control scandal. So I think this is just a part of the entire scandal and part of the evidence trail, and I think yung focus natin should not really be just on this particular matter.
Right. Pero generally, Attorney, marami kasi pong nagulat talaga dun sa recantation of the Maleta boys. But based on history, how do courts typically view and treat recantations? Are they usually frowned upon? And following this, can the court still use their previous testimonies, or hindi na po yan magagamit?
Well, actually, pwede pang magamit. Like what I've said, yung talagang problem doon, we really do not know which statement is true. So recantation is not a crime. Witnesses are actually allowed to correct statements if they think that there was they committed a genuine error in their previous statement, so they can make necessary corrections. Yung problem na lang doon is credibility. But as you have mentioned, it is true that recantations are frowned upon. And our courts are saying that we have to look into these recantations with extreme caution. So we really have to look, kasi when you accuse people based on false accusation, then of course the rule of law needs to protect those people, who are being unjustly accused. But at the same time, if there is basis for these accusations, and there are outside forces that are trying to interfere or that are trying to influence or induce these witnesses to withdraw their previous statements, then we also have to protect the witnesses, because both are actually very essential to in our search for justice and truth into the flood control scandal.
Well, Attorney, as you mentioned, it's the credibility that comes into question once someone recants their statement. And I think there are just 4 so far who have recanted. But what about the
Opo.
rest? So now it's basically their word against their word. How do these witnesses establish their credibility once again so people will believe them?
Well, actually, the truth does not depend on majority, no? So hindi naman parami-rami yan kung mas marami nag-recant or mas marami ang who want to affirm their or stay or stand by their previous statements. So ultimately, in a way, the recantation may also affect the credibility of the statements of the other witnesses, especially, of course, if they are based on the same narrative, if they are based on the same, practically the same statements and the same, let me say, the same evidence or the same basis. So necessarily it will have an effect. But ultimately, the court process tells us that the credibility of each witness and the truth or veracity of their individual statements will have to be taken on a case-to-case basis. So each witness will have to be examined independently. So it doesn't mean if some are lying, then everyone is lying. Well, in a way, that can be one of the assumptions, but that will have to be independently verified by the courts.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Attorney, that we should not focus on Maleta Boys in terms of the issue on flood control projects. And as you said, there are other factors that we need to consider in terms of investigation. Ano po ba? Ano pa yung mga dapat gawin ngayon pagdating sa investigation? Because as we all know, Zaldico, we don't know where he is. And the other scheme na alam po natin pagdating sa flood control ay hindi pa rin po natin napag-uusapan talaga. So what else pa po? Ano pa po ba yung dapat gawin para mas maimbestigahan? Ang Senate po, ang sabi po ni Senator Erwin Tulfo, they will start flood control, blue ribbon again, on the investigation on flood control. Attorney.
Well, I think there must really be an in-depth investigation into these matters because, the public is getting uneasy about
Yes.
results, no? So ultimately, yung results yung hinahanap natin dito. Culpability and, of course, we need to see somebody answering to all these matters. So, investigation. So, in the past, puro lang tayong investigation.
Oo.
And, I don't know, we really have to see somebody answering. Kasi, ultimately, we owe it to the public and the government owes it to the public to see to it that somebody answers to this, corruption problem.
Well, Attorney, the last update that we got from the fugitive Congressman Zaldico is that he is seeking political asylum in France. Now, do you believe the government is doing enough to actually bring back Congressman Zaldico, or marami pong legal hindrances to that?
Well, our last update actually parang nakalimutan na natin yung case yung asylum application ni Zaldico, no? After that, there have been a lot of other pressing news and updates. So parang nakalimutan na natin. But you're right. The last thing we know is that he was applying for asylum. And then after that, we really have no updates on what the government has been doing about it, whether the government is actively opposing the said application for asylum. And well, practically, I also do not have any updates or information as to the latest development as to that application. So all we know is that it has been filed. And it is now being processed by the French authorities. So I do hope that the government is doing all it can to oppose that application on the ground that I don't think there is sufficient basis for, kasi yung question sa asylum kasi is, are you being persecuted politically? So, or based on your political, So kung wala talagang political color to, it's really an investigation into a possible crime, then there really is no basis for an asylum. So I think the government really has to be very serious in putting forth an active opposition to the asylum application of Zaldico.
Well, Attorney, when it comes to witnesses or one in particular, former DPWH head Manuel Bonoan, much has been discussed in terms of making him a state witness. And people are obviously calling for, the heads of the big fish. Do you feel that there are names that are enough to be called big fish? And should former Secretary Manuel Bonoan be included as a state witness?
Well, that's for the evaluation of the ombudsman and our investigating body. Ultimately, they will have to decide, if some witnesses can be sacrificed and be taken or be deemed a state witness, so that we can have big fish, a big fish, no. Well, we do not know yet whether we already have the names of the big fish. I don't know. That's still something that we are waiting for, if we already have them or not, if they are already part of the investigation or not. So I just do hope that we will soon have clear result into this matter, for the benefit of all the public.
Well, you mentioned, Attorney, kanina, that there are so many investigations already and people are getting anxious, doon sa talagang result ditong flood control projects. There are some who are in jail already, pero may isa, like si former Senator Bong Revilla, na lumabas out in bail. I was wondering, this is just a, kumbaga parang wonder. Pwede po ba magtayo or mag-dedicate ng special court para po mas mapabilis ito? I understand, Sandigan Bayan is for the government officials, doon malilites kung may mga pandarambong na nangyayari. But I was wondering, kasi parang nangyari po sa not Mamasapan, Maguindanao Massacre, they allotted a special court para mas mapabilis dahil there are a lot of mga defendants dun aabutin ng years, thousands, hundreds of years, sinasabi nga nila para malitis yun. So dito po sa flood control project, is that even possible to allot a special court to make sure na mas mabilis yung pag-imbestiga at pagsampa ng kaso, trial sa mga accountable officials?
Well, actually, it can be done, and it's the discussion of the Supreme Court, and especially if lots of cases are already coming in, and there's a need to, to establish or to dedicate special courts for this particular purpose. I'm sure the Supreme Court will do so. So, hinihintay na lang natin is the influx of cases, because as soon as we have the cases, and it would be more expedient to have them in a special court, I'm sure the Supreme Court will look into this particular suggestion.
So what is influx of cases? Gaano po karami?
When the circumstances will make it necessary to set up dedicated courts for this purpose. So for example, if they will be, kasi reality kasi sa court, di ba, we all know that sometimes na cases in a day's hearing, sometimes around 10 to 20 cases are on the calendar. So if these cases will be mixed with the other pending cases that the courts to which they are raffled are already handling, so I don't know if how many years it would take for these cases to really move, no? So if courts can be dedicated for this particular purpose, then I think we can have results sooner.
Yeah, but it can be done. Yun yung importante.
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done, of course.
All right, Attorney, if we can just shift gears. Last week, another big development was the extradition request of the United States for Kingdom of Jesus Christ leader Apollo Kibuloy. Now, apparently, there's a long legal process also for that. We can't simply just turn him over to a different state. It still has to go through the DFA, the DOJ, and then to our courts. And there are two options as well here. Either we postpone the extradition until his cases are resolved, or we can also temporarily surrender ito nga si Pastor Apollo Kibuloy to the United States. Anong tingin nyo, Attorney? What is the most feasible and viable way in this particular case?
Well, I think there was already a policy statement given by the DOJ before, even before the receipt of the request, that Kibuloy or Pastor Kibuloy will have to face criminal prosecution first here in the Philippines. Will have to face his cases first in the Philippines, and if ever he is convicted in his Philippine cases, he will have to serve the sentences first in the Philippines. But that was a policy decision that was announced before. Ultimately, I think there have been developments which might be considered by the president as the executive, because ultimately, whether to extradite Pastor Quiboloy or not will be an executive decision, and it's part of the prerogatives of the president in the conduct of foreign relations. So there will be a lot of factors and considerations that will have to be considered by the president. So they will have to look into this matter. Kasi yung isang consideration dito, as requested by the United States, yung logic kasi, if you would wait, assuming we will wait for the completion of the Philippine judicial process, and assuming there is a sentence that he will have to serve it first, and assuming it's life imprisonment, then that will take a long time before he can be extradited to the United States to face similar cases in the United States. So yung question dito is the number one, yung availability of the witnesses, preservation of yung testimony ng mga witnesses, that now that it's still the facts are still fresh in their memory. So may possible arrangement then na we may allow extradition temporarily, like temporarily surrender him to the United States to also face prosecution there, but not necessarily to serve sentence there, assuming he gets convicted before the U.S. courts. So meaning to say, after the completion, we extradite him to face prosecution or trial in the U.S., and then after trial or completion of the judicial trial in the U.S., he should be brought back in the Philippines for the continuation of whatever judicial processes are in the Philippines. And if ever, for example, he gets sentenced in the United States, and he will also have a sentence in the Philippines, it depends on the nature of the sentences, because there are sentences which can actually be simultaneously served. For example, life sentence before the let's say declared by the U.S. courts, and a life sentence in the Philippines, they can actually be served simultaneously. So service of a life sentence in the Philippines can be tantamount to serving the life sentence in the U.S.
Well, Attorney, on that note, the counsel for Quiboloy has already, I think that's also Attorney Torion, who was saying that, the Philippines still has jurisdiction over the Quiboloy case, and that he shouldn't be extradited. And then, of course, there is the USPH Treaty from 1994, and as you mentioned, it's either they hold off until the case in the Philippines is finished, or they can temporarily hand him over to conditions agreed upon by the Philippines and the U.S. But in terms of, let's say, being the legal counsel of Quiboloy, why would they resist their client being flown out as part of the extradition? What's the difference?
Well,
It's both
ang hirap
both
na tanong
sides,
yun,
heavy
because
cases.
Dean Torion is my good friend, so I would not preempt whatever strategy he has in handling this case. Well, I don't know. It's a matter of preference. Siguro na they want the trial here in the Philippines first, and they want to avoid the extradition. Well, I don't know.
Well, oo, mahirap. But sabi nga nila, the ball is in the court of President Bongbong Marcos kung ano yung magiging desisyon niya, if he will be tried here first, then extradite to the U.S., or the other way around. But before we let you go, I want to ask you about the impeachment case of VP Sara Duterte. It is indeed day 14, pero suspended po siya ngayon. Pero ang gagawin po kasi tomorrow, if they will resume, ay kakausapin po yung two hostile witnesses, yung mga dispersing officers. And Senator Amy, during her interjection last week, she raised a question on who is accountable on this particular issue. Is it the Vice President or the dispersing officer? Your thoughts on that?
Well, kasi ultimately, what has been established by the prosecution right now is the evidence trail. But the evidence trail, it only, at this point, it establishes irregularities. But ultimately, the question will, what we expect from the prosecution ultimately is for them to establish several key points. After you establish irregularities, accounting, auditing process, disbursement process, you will have to establish attribution. Attribution is very important because in order to impeach President Sara, so you need these irregularities need to be attributed to her.
Yeah.
And then attribution need to result to culpability. And culpability needs to result to an impeachable offense. So ultimately, yun yung kailangan i-establish ng prosecution, and that's what we expect na yun yung magiging direction nila. Kasi that's the critical point talaga. Whatever you can establish, all these irregularities, if they cannot be attributed, and if it will not
Right.
establish culpability of the Vice President, so ultimately, walang ano yun, walang weight yun
Yeah.
without attribution.
All right, we'll see what's going to happen tomorrow. But for the meantime, thank you so much for your time and insights.
Thank you po.
Constitutional law expert, Attorney Ralph Sarmiento.
Right now, don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News.
La Mesa Dam is nearing its spilling level, with the water level reaching 79.94 meters. The dam's critical level is at 79.50 meters, while its spilling level is at 80.15 meters. Authorities warn that excess water could affect low-lying areas along the Tulahan River. These include Fairview Forest Hill Subdivision, Quirino Highway, Santa Quiteria, and San Bartolome in Quezon City, as well as parts of Valenzuela and Malabon.
All right. Oo, yun nga, no, as I've said earlier, before, the rain is just a natural phenomenon, but it is actually a reminder for everybody. Like yung lagi natin pinag-uusapan.
Yung sinasabi kong annual reminder na, no?
It's a reminder of corruption and incompetence of government officials. Like in Parañaque, you would see the post of Parañaque residents that, kumbaga, decades na silang nakatira doon. And until now, that's still their problem, no?
Yeah.
Yung mga baha na hanggang dito. And you will see also that talagang it's getting worse because there are areas na hindi naman binabaha before.
Yeah.
And ngayon binabaha na, di ba?
And we haven't even started talking about the psychological effects because there is still a trauma from Ondoy, from like the people of Marikina, yung pinagdaanan nila dun sa baha na yun. It's and then when you hear of second alarm, na sana hindi mag-third alarm, I'm sure it brings back things that they went through that that they shouldn't have gone through.
Message nga lang ng NDRRMC, nakakatrauma nila. Diba?
Actually, when it also comes to these flood control projects, even DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon was very honest, and he said it's not an overnight solution. If people think kaya to in 1 year, parang that's just a dream. It won't happen in just overnight. No, if they try to fix all these flood control projects, because that just goes to show how bad and substandard goes itong mga project na ginawa ng mga dating contractors. So, kung ginawa lang kasi nila yan ng maayos dati, hindi tayo nagsayang ng pera, then we wouldn't find ourselves.
Can you imagine
in this
from
situation.
July 2022, between July 2022 and May 2025, there are about 500 plus billion of pesos allocated for 9,000 plus flood control projects. And you will see from yesterday and from previous months na paano ginastos itong pera na to.
Perimeter wall nga ng exclusive village, bumagsak.
All right, and now in other news, 8 people have died and 1 remains missing due to the combined effects of the enhanced southwest monsoon and recent tropical cyclones Luis and Maymay. The NDRRMC said the reported deaths included 2 in Benguet, 3 in Rizal, and 3 in Batangas. The deaths were linked to landslides, rock slides, a fallen tree, drowning, and electrocution. As of 6 a.m. today, around 223,000 families or 752,000 individuals have been affected by the weather conditions. And the government has provided 33.94 million pesos in aid to affected families.
Meanwhile, President Marcos has ordered government agencies to remain on heightened alert as habagat rains continue to affect parts of Luzon. Malacanang said the president is closely monitoring flood-prone areas as well as rising water levels in dams and reservoirs. Agencies were also told to coordinate water releases and take preventive measures to protect communities and critical infrastructure. The president also directed the health department to assist people exposed to floodwaters amid the risk of leptospirosis.
All right, and at this point, we are joined by Engineer Jose Ignacio Valera, the Chief of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Division of the Office of Civil Defense for the Cordillera Administrative Region. Good morning, Engineer.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning po, ma'am, and to all listeners of this program.
Sir, alam naman po natin na ang Cordillera ay isa sa mga malakas na tinamaan nitong habagat. Kamusta na po ang kasalukuyang sitwasyon sa inyo?
Ma'am, ayon sa pa rin po, ating monitoring, so dito pa rin sa Baguio Benguet at saka mostly po sa probinsya ng Abra ay nakakaranas pa rin po ng light to moderate rains and sometimes po nagkakaroon po ng heavy rains po.
Alright, meron pa po ba tayong mga areas na sa ngayon po nakikita po natin impassable, hindi po madaanan at which areas po itong binabantayan natin na ito due to landslide and mga debris na nakaharang?
Ma'am, meron pa tayo dito sa parte po ng Benguet at tulad po ng ating Cannon Road. Tapos yung Halsam Highway po natin, yung Baguio to Buntok, Mountain Province po, na kalsada. At saka dito po sa Baguio to Nueva Vizcaya Road, na ang tawag po natin dyan is Ambuklaw Road, ma'am. So yun po yung mga major roads po natin leading to Baguio City, in and out po na nakakaranas po ng mga series of landslide na andiyan naman po yung ating DPWH at saka mga lokal na contractors po na nagbibigay po ng tulong para magkaroon po ng panstro o kaya opening po sa mga nasabing lugar because of landslide po, ma'am.
Sir, tanungin ko na rin po kung ano yung sitwasyon sa Ambuklaw and Binga Dam. Nag-release na po ba ng water? Ano po yung mga areas na kailangan on alert?
Yes, ma'am. Nag-release po sila simula pa nung isang araw. Saglit lang.
Aha, go ahead po. Oo, we need to get information kasi po, no? Ano po ba ang epekto nitong pag-release ng tubig mula dito sa mga dam na ito in the Cordillera Administrative Region? So at this point, go ahead
yes,
po.
sir.
Yes po, ma'am. Ayon po sa namamahala po ng ating dalawang dam po dito sa Benguet, bale sakop po niya dito sa Ambuklaw Dam ay meron po silang 8 gates na naka-open pa rin po. Ng total na metro po is 2.5. Nakahapon po is 14 meters po yung total po na opening po nila sa 8 gates po nila. Tapos dito naman po sa baba niya, that is the Binga Dam, ay naka-open pa rin po yung 6 nilang gate na ang total po ng metro ng openings is 3 meters. Kahapon po is total po na meters is 15. So binabaan na po nila. Ang dadaluyan po nito ay hanggang sa Pangasinan po kasi ang kanyang pupuntahan itong tubig na nirelease po ng dalawa po natin na dams dito sa Benguet.
Sir, sabi po ng NDRRMC na may 2 pong reported deaths sa Benguet. Ano po ba yung dahilan ng kanilang pagkamatay at ito po ba ay verified na?
Ma'am, 2 po sa may Shilan, La Trinidad, Benguet. Yung una po na nagkaroon po tayo ng death casualty. Na ayon po sa report ng ating lokal na gobyerno, together with the kapulisan po natin, is landslide po yung dahilan. Bale yung kainan po ito, yung kanilang lugar, na yung landslide ay galing po sa kabila po na kalsada. So lumipat o kaya pumunta po sa kainan na kung saan sila nagtatrabaho. So yun po yung cause ng tinatawag po natin na victim na death na 2.
Well, sir, of course, we all know po na 80% of the areas dyan po sa Cordillera Administrative Region ay landslide-prone areas and may mga naitala na nga po tayo mga fatalities dyan. But sa inyo pong assessment, marami pa rin po doon kasi ang mga nakatira. Meron po bang coordination with you and the LGU para po mailipat po sa mas ligtas na lugar ang mga residente para po makaiwas po tayo dito sa mga aksidente?
Yes po, nagkakaroon po tayo ng mga, noong una po, meron tayong mga preemptive evacuations. Meron din po yung tinatawag natin na nag-evacuate sila sa mga kamag-anak nila. At saka meron din po tayong active po ngayon na 11 po evacuation centers. Dito sa, lalo na sa Benguet po na lugar. Meron din po tayong mga nag-evacuate po na nasa mga safe na lugar ng kanilang mga kamag-anak. So yun po yung mga ginawa po natin together with the local government officials po.
Sir, meron na po bang mga areas na hindi mapupuntahan or napupuntahan ng aid?
Napupuntahan
ng tulong?
Ng tulong, ma'am. So far po ay wala po tayong ganun po na mga na-monitor kasi bago pa lang po dumating yung mga ganito po na panahon, okay, insidente, ay meron po kaming preposition goods coming from yung mga food packs po ng DSWD. Tapos meron din po kami dito sa opisina ng Office of Civil Defense, Cordillera, na mga non-food items na naka-preposition po sa mga probable na isolated areas, mga ganun kung may panahon po na ganito. So naka-preposition po kami before pa lang na sumapit po yung mga weather disturbances po natin.
Sir, sabi po ng Pag-asa, nakapagtala daw po sila ng 525.44 millimeters of rain in just 2 days sa Baguio City. Katumbas po niyan ay mahigit kalahating buwan ng ulan. Kayo po, sir, paano niyo po ba madidescribe yung pagbagsak ng ulan dyan sa Cordillera? Ito po ba ay masasabi niyong unusual? At may mga lugar po ba na dati naman ay hindi binabaha pero binaha na po ngayon?
Ganun nga po yung kwan. As per sa ating Pag-asa Synoptic Station po dito, na ang head dito ay si Engineer Larry Esperanza. Yung mga buhos po ng ulan, lalo na po noong August 8, ay umabot po siya ng 130.5 mm, 5.6 mm. So, yung others po ay talaga malalaki po yung amount of rain na accumulated yung sa Baguio Synoptic Station. Ay meron na rin po tayong mga mga naranasan na ganito po ng mga amount of rains dito lalo sa Baguio City. Tulad ng typhoon na Alawin, mga ganun po, at saka yung mga other po na weather disturbance po tayo. So yung mga areas po na mga prone, meron naman po ginawa yung mga local na gobyerno together with po nasa side naman po ng national government. Nagkaroon po ng tinatawag po natin na mitigation measures na ginawa. Kaya lang meron pa rin po yung mga hindi inaasahan talaga na mga lugar na parang nakikita na yung mga tao na safe. Yun pala ay nag-focus po tayo ng landslide at saka mga flooding. Kasi nga po matagal po yung tinatawag po natin na walang ulan. So nagkakaroon po ng mga pagbitak-bitak ng mga lupa. Lalo sa mga steepy slopes dito, tapos papasukan ng tubig, the possibility po ay talaga magkakaroon po ng malusan po siya, ay babagsak po siya. So, meron po tayong mga ginawa ng mga lokal ng gobyerno at saka national government na mga mitigation naman. Doon na siguro yung iba, hindi lahat ay nakita.
Okay, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras at mag-ingat po kayo dyan. That was Engineer Jose Ignacio Valera, Chief of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Division of the Office of Civil Defense, Cordillera.
Now stay tuned. Morning Matters returns after a quick break.
Good morning and welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News.
The enhanced southwest monsoon has affected 2,424 classrooms across the country. According to the Department of Education's Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service, 403 classrooms were destroyed, while 505 sustained major damage and 1,516 had minor damage. Most of the affected classrooms were reported in the Ilocos Region, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Central Luzon. DepEd said it is processing funds for repairs, cleanup, and clearing operations to restore the classrooms and help ensure learning continuity.
Sa Some residents of Manila evacuated due to heavy rains and flooding. For the latest on the ground, we have mobile journal Daniel Dayaw reporting live. Daniel, go ahead.
Yes, good morning Angela, Cheska, Pauline. Kasulukuyan ngang bine-verify at nakasilong dito ang ilang kapatid natin sa Barangay 101 Zone 8 ng Tondo dahil nga sa kanilang paglika sa pagtaas ng ilog ng tubig sa Estero Vitas. So meron din nga pagbaha sa ilang parte ng Vitas Katuparan kaya nga nagpasya sila na lumikas muna at pumunta dito. So kung kahapon ay Angela ay may pumunta na dito at around 7 a.m. na mga pamilya. Ngayon ay mas nadagdagan pa. So kung nakikita nyo sa akin likuran, nandito sila, bine-verify. At yung iba naman ay nakapila na for hot meals dahil yung LGU dito is nagpapamigay din ng hot meals. Pero apart from that, Angela, ay meron din silang pag-check up sa mga nurses at doktor dahil nasabi nga ng kagawad health worker na kahapon yung mga lumikas sa galing Riverside ay may nilalagnat na ng mga bata. So around 12 daw na bata yung nilalagnat from Riverside. So apart from that, Angela, merong 149 families ang affected dito at 546 individuals. But then again, ito nga nagpaparegister at bine-verify pa nga ang ilang mga kapatid natin dito. So far, wala namang ulan dito pero malakas pa rin yung hangin. Kaya yung ilang mga kapatid natin, lalo sa Pitas Katugparan na tinangay daw yung yero ay hindi pa rin makapunta sa kanilang bahay. Angela.
Daniel, which areas pa rin dyan sa buong Manila ang lubog sa baha?
Yes, Angela. So far, sa mga nadaanan kong parte ng Manila, lalo na sa Road 10, C5 at sa Quezon City ay wala namang baha. Pero merong malaking baha doon sa Taft area, bandang Quirino, dahil doon na madalas nagkakaroon ng pagbaha. Pero yung baha doon is gutter deep lang, Angela.
Alright, thank you so much for your time at ingat kayo dyan, Mobile Journal, Daniel Dayaw.
Now, the Senate has called off today's impeachment trial and plenary session as heavy rains continue to threaten Metro Manila. And for the details, mobile journalist Marymon Reyes joins us live. Okay, so Marymon, ano ba ang naging rason ng cancellation at ano na ang mangyayari sa timeline ng impeachment trial?
Pauline, dahil sa hindi magandang panahon ay naglabas ng memo itong si Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian na ino-order na work from home muna ang setup ng ilang mga opisina sa Senado. Samantala, yung impeachment trial supposedly ngayong 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the afternoon ay suspendido muna maging yung plenary session ng Senado na supposedly nakaschedule siya at around 3 p.m. onwards. So ang mangyayari, imbis na ngayon may impeachment trial session, bukas na lamang yun mangyayari. Pero wala pa namang nababago sa schedule nito pagdating sa trial pati sa plenary session. Ang mangyayari nga lang din, imbis na makikita natin ngayon na uupo na ulit sa witness stand itong si State Auditor Sailin Del Campo, bukas na siya ulit uupo doon. We're also still asking si Clerk of Courts and Senate Secretary Ray Bantug kung natuloy ba yung conference ng prosecution pati ng defense kung saan i-compare nila itong mga acknowledgement receipt and other documents na ayaw mag-stipulate ng depensa. Pero more likely kung sakali man dahil nga sa hindi magandang panahon, bukas magpapatuloy lahat ng kailangan asikasuhin ng Senado. Pauline.
Marymon, this week pa rin ba patatawagin ng impeachment court yung dalawang special disbursing officer ng OVP at DepEd bilang hostile witness ng prosecution?
Pauline, nakasked kasi itong si Del Campo, pati si Edward Fajarda ng DepEd, pati ito namang si Gina Acosta na SDO, Special Disbursement Officer naman ng OVP. At sila ay nakatakdang ipatawag ng prosecution for this week. Pero dahil nga nabitin, so bawasan natin ng isang araw, si Del Campo bukas upo ulit, nakadepende kung gaano katagal yung direct examination sa parte ng prosecution and the cross-examination on the part of the defense, kung magkakaroon pa na redirect, recross, o kaya naman yung interjection from senator judges. Doon natin malalaman kung aabot pa sa schedule ngayong linggo itong dalawang SDO. Pero ang malinaw kung sakali mang magkakaroon ng schedule, mag-i-issue ulit ng bagong subpoena para ma-extend yung pagpapatawag sa kanila, or if hindi naman kung kakayanin this week, yun yung isa sa mga antabayanan natin. Ang nasabi naman dito ni impeachment court spokesperson Attorney Reggie Tonggol, meanwhile yung impeachment trial calendar nakabase yan sa dami ng nakalistang witnesses na ipapatawag ng parehong panig, pero hindi pa ito nakadepende sa dami ng documentary evidence na ipepresenta. So maaari talagang maapektuhan yung haba o yung bilis ng kada article of impeachment na isinasalang. Pauline.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. That was mobile journalist Marymon Reyes.
Continuous monsoon rains triggered chest-to-head deep flooding across several areas of Parañaque City. For the latest on the ground, we have mobile journalist Francis Rivera. Francis, kamusta lang sitwasyon dyan?
Yes, Jess. Kaya ngayon nga, halos wala na tayo makitang baha dito. Pero kanina, pagdating natin, halos ankle deep. Itong buong kahabaan na to ng San Isidro, specifically dito sa San Felipe Street. At halos kahapon, isa rin to sa mga lampas tao. Yun nga explanation nila sa atin, talagang lampas tao daw talaga yung inabot or yung tubig baha dito. Dahil nga, parang nagiging catch basin ito ng ilog sa pagitan nga ng Las Piñas, Muntinlupa at Parañaque. Kaya naman yung malapit na ilog dito kapag umapaw, automatic nga raw na lumalabas sa drainage system nila dito at umaapaw. Kaya naman inaabot yung mga kabahayan dito. As you can see sa aking likuran, Cheska, medyo matataas na yung mga bahay, may kataasan na. Pero base doon sa explanation nila sa atin kanina o yung kwento nila, talagang pinasok at talagang inabot yung loob ng bahay nila. At actually, just a few moments lang or at least mga 5 minutes bago tayo umere, ito lang, ngayon lang talagang humupa o talagang nalinis yung tubig dito. Pero kanina pagdating natin dito, talagang ankle deep pa yung tubig, no? Kaya yung mga residente dito, makita nga natin, naglilinis at talagang inaayos na nila yung kanilang mga labas ng bahay. Maging doon kasi sa pinasok na bahay, naglalabas sila ng tubig. So naabutan pa natin silang maglikas din ng mga kanilang mga gamit at ngayon inaayos na nila pabalik sa kanilang mga bahay at naglilinis na sila ngayon dito sa San Felipe Street. Dito yan sa may San Isidro, Parañaque City.
Alright, thank you for those updates, mobile journalist Francis Rivera.
Right, so earlier today I was able to talk to Asek Dumlao of the DSWD and she said that 1.3 million affected families as we speak. Talaga ang binibigyan nila ng tulong, yung mga basic necessities like food, hygiene kits, etc. And I asked her also how are they gonna make sure that everybody is gonna be given assistance because this is 1.3 million families. This is what? Almost 1.1% of our population. And she said there are warehouses naman that are already pre-positioned in the areas and they are actually coordinating to LGUs to make sure nga na mabigyan ng assistance yung mga affected families.
Dito kasi we see the street outside from the studio and we see it na bubuhos, titigil.
Now it's sunny.
Ulit. Now the sun is out, so sana tuloy-tuloy na po yan. But areas in Zambales, Bataan, and in Mindoro, may heavy rainfall warning pa po sila until Wednesday. So, yung mga tao na nasa affected areas, sana po they stay safe and dry. Sana wala na pong casualties. Ang hirap kasi.
And habagat pa lang yan,
Habagat
right?
pa lang.
This is not a tropical storm or a typhoon. So please do stay alert and continue to monitor updates. And during this time, please also don't forget your pets.
Yes.
Actually, ang ganda nung ginawa ng Quezon City. They were able to provide a shelter for pets na naiwan kasi hindi pwede dalhin ng mga residente yung pets nila in some evacuation centers, right? So may isang lugar doon where they left their dogs, their cats. So that's good. No pets are getting left behind. But for the habagat, so it will persist until I think Wednesday, but all week parang mukhang uulan pa rin. And what's unique actually about Typhoon Dolphin, for context, it's actually an unprecedented storm. It's a really unique storm in a sense na it's the first time that a storm that was named in the eastern side of the Pacific maintained its strength all the way until China, until it made landfall in China. So malakas talaga yan, and that's what's pulling the southwest monsoon sa atin.
Plus, we have to remember it's El Nino season and it's going to be until 2027. So kahit sabihin mo there's no storm, there's no tropical depression, depression, kapag kami namamataan outside the Philippine area of responsibility, palalakasin niya ng habagat. So it's going to be like this, no, for the next until 2027. And yun nga, what we need to do is to monitor our localities and make sure nga na talagang natutugunan yung mga nangangailangan ng tulong. Alright, and please don't forget to stay tuned here on One News for more updates regarding the situation in our country. That wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. I'm Angela Lagunsad Castro.
We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. I'm Cheska Lituncalo.
Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Kapatid, we are One News.
Your side,
all the time.